The grocery store shelves are bare, not because of a snowstorm, not because of a holiday rush, because the trucks stopped. The grid flickered, diesel got rationed, and the just-in-time supply chain that feeds 330 million Americans did what it was always going to do under pressure. It snapped. You're standing in an aisle that smells like warm plastic and sour milk, staring at empty metal racks where bread used to be. Your phone has no signal. Your kids are in the car, and somewhere about 1,000 miles from here, on a piece of land the size of a small city, a man you've never met is sitting on enough grain to feed your entire county for a year. He bought that land 3 years ago. He knew. Now here's the part that should make you deeply uncomfortable. That man isn't some tinfoil hat prepper with a bunker in Montana. He's a billionaire, a tech mogul, a hedge fund manager, and he didn't buy that land for the views. He bought it because he understands something most people refuse to see. Money is paper. Stocks are promises. Real estate can be seized. But the dirt that grows food, that's the last honest asset on Earth. And right now, while you're watching this, the wealthiest people on the planet are buying it up faster than any time in modern history. We're going to break down exactly why, what they know that you probably don't, and what it actually means for you and your family when things go sideways. And stick around, because toward the end, I'm going to show you something about water rights that completely changed how I think about land. Most people don't even know this game exists. So, let's talk about what's actually happening. Bill Gates is now the largest private owner of farmland in the United States, around 270,000 acres across dozens of states. Let that number hit you. That's bigger than the entire city of New York. One guy. And he's not alone. Jeff Bezos has been scooping up massive agricultural holdings. Ted Turner owns roughly 2 million acres. Chinese investment groups increased their U.S. farmland ownership from about 14,000 acres in 2010 to over 380,000 acres just a decade later. That's a 27-fold increase. These aren't stupid people. They don't throw money at things that don't matter. So what do they see? They see the math, and the math is brutal. The planet loses roughly 24 billion tons of topsoil every year. That's the layer that actually grows food. Once it's gone, it takes nature about 500 years to regenerate 1 inch. We've burned through a third of the world's arable land in the last 40 years. A third. Gone. Meanwhile, the global population is sprinting toward 10 billion. More mouths, less dirt. You don't need a PhD to understand where that line crosses, but the story you were told, the one about technology solving everything, about vertical farms and lab-grown meat saving us all? That's a beautiful fairy tale, and maybe, eventually, some of it pans out. But right now, today, 95% of the world's food still comes from soil. Regular, old-fashioned, in-the-ground dirt. The billionaires aren't betting on the fairy tale, they're betting on the dirt. Now, I want you to think about this differently than just an investment story, because this isn't really about money, not at its core. Think about what farmland actually is in a collapse scenario. When the dollar inflates into confetti, when supply chains fracture, when governments start rationing. What do people need? Not Bitcoin, not gold. You can't eat gold. They need calories. They need protein. They need something growing out of the ground. And whoever controls that ground controls the food. And whoever controls the food, well, you finish that sentence yourself. History has already written it 100 times. The game isn't stocks versus bonds anymore. It's acres versus nothing. Here's something that flew completely under the radar. Over 40% of U.S. farmland is rented, not owned, by the people who farm it. Nearly half. That means the actual farmers, The ones with dirt under their nails don't own the land they work. They lease it. And when the landlord is a private equity fund or a billionaire trust, the farmer becomes a tenant, a contractor, a cog. The food chain gets longer, the control gets tighter, and the people who actually know how to grow food have less and less say in what happens to it. The average American farmer is 58 years old. 58. That's not a workforce. That's a retirement party. And their kids? Most of them aren't taking over the farm. They left for the city years ago. So when this generation ages out, who steps in? Corporations, investment firms, people who've never touched soil in their lives but own thousands of acres of it. That's not farming. That's resource extraction with a barn on it. And if you're thinking, okay, but this is just rich people being rich, it doesn't affect me. Let me ask you something. If things break down, if we hit a real SHTF scenario, who do you think controls the food? The answer used to be your neighbor, the local farmer down the road, the co-op. Now, it might be an LLC registered in Delaware that answers to shareholders in 3 different countries. You comfortable with that? Let me drop something here that connects to what I mentioned earlier about water. This is the part most people completely miss. When you buy farmland, in most states, you're also buying the water rights attached to it, the groundwater, the river access, the irrigation permits. Agriculture already uses about 70% of the world's fresh water. 70. And fresh water is getting scarcer by the year. Aquifers are draining. The Ogallala Aquifer, which irrigates a massive chunk of America's grain belt, has dropped by over 150 feet in some areas. It took thousands of years to fill. We're emptying it in decades. So when Bill Gates buys farmland in Nebraska, he's not just buying corn futures, he's buying water, the one resource that literally everything alive depends on. Land without water is a desert. Land with water is power, and they know it. You know what? I want to hear from you on this one. If you had the chance to buy even a small piece of land right now, would you? Have you already? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many people watching this have already started thinking about this, because every conversation I've had lately keeps circling back to the same thing: land, food, water, the basics. Now look, I'm not telling you to go buy a 100-acre farm tomorrow. Most of us can't. I certainly didn't start there. But here's what matters if you're someone who takes preparedness seriously. Understanding this trend isn't optional anymore, because it tells you something about the future that no news anchor is going to spell out for you. The ultra-wealthy are quietly building the infrastructure to survive and thrive in a world where food is scarce and centralized. They're not doing this for a 10% annual return. Farmland historically returns about 3 to 4%. These people have yachts. They're not clipping coupons. They're building lifeboats. Big, soil-covered, freshwater-irrigated lifeboats. And they're not building one for you. So what do you do with this information? First, you recognize the signal for what it is. When the richest, most connected, most informed people on the planet all start doing the same thing quietly, you pay attention. You don't need to match them dollar for dollar, but you need to understand the game. Second, think local. Even a quarter acre with decent soil and a water source is more valuable in a crisis than a 6-figure stock portfolio. I've talked to people who turned suburban backyards into serious food production. Not hobby gardening, actual caloric output. Potatoes, beans, squash, the stuff that keeps you alive, not Instagram pretty tomatoes. Learn to grow staples, not garnishes. Third, and this is the one I'd carve into stone if I could, build relationships with the people who grow food near you. Actual farmers, local producers, the people who still know what seasons mean. In a collapse scenario, a relationship with a farmer is worth more than a warehouse full of freeze-dried meals. Community is a survival strategy. Isolation is a death sentence with extra steps. And here's the quiet part nobody says out loud. The consolidation of farmland isn't just an economic trend. It's a shift in who holds the leverage when everything else falls apart. Every empire in history understood this. Control the grain, control the people. Rome did it, the British Empire did it, the Soviet Union tried to do it and starved millions when they got it wrong. The mechanism is ancient. Only the names on the deed have changed. Preparation isn't paranoia. It's pattern recognition, and the pattern right now is screaming. Let me bring this full circle. You're back in that grocery store. Shelves are empty. The grid is unreliable. The system that was supposed to be unbreakable just broke. But this time, you're not panicking. You've got soil. You've got seeds. You've got water. You've got a network of people who know how to turn dirt into dinner. You didn't need $1 billion. You just needed to read the same signals the billionaires read and act on a scale that made sense for your life. They built their lifeboats. You build yours. Different size, same ocean. If this video made you think, even a little, hit that subscribe button, because the kind of information that actually matters in the world we're heading into isn't going to trend on social media. It's going to live in corners like this, and I'd hate for you to miss what's coming next.